Okay, good morning everyone. We are moving along over here in the Yud Gimel Ikrim in the 13 Principles of Faith. Last week we concluded principle number 5, which was all about tefillah, all about our prayers. And as we go into the 6th principle of faith, so we are moving into a new realm, which is going to be a shift from the first 5 that we were just speaking about. The first 5, as we know, are things that I think we could all admit on a logical and a rational level, just with our experience in life and that which we know and that which we learn and we see with our own eyes. They're all things that are very believable, all things that are somewhat easy for a person to grasp in the world of Emunah, in the world of faith. Meaning to believe that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world, and to see that He's running everything so perfectly, and to be able to see that His hand is lovingly and compassionately in all the different things that are going on in my life, and to know that there's only one address that I'm going to daven to, that I'll pray to. All of those things in the realm of the human condition, so to speak, they're all within our reference, our frame of reality. But as we embark now into the 6th of the principles of faith and beyond, we're coming to a new world, a new realm. And this is going to bring us into the world of Nevuah, which is called prophecy. Something that you and I have really no connection to. Something that we are certainly not aware of. We don't have prophets in the world today. There have not been prophets in the world for over 2,000 years. So in order for a person to be able to go through the next several principles of faith, it is going to require an enormous amount of humility on the part of each and every one of us, that we can believe that it is not only possible and not only likely, but we have to believe in a reality that thousands of years ago, there were spiritual giants who walked the world that were much greater than we are. And they were much greater than even the more previous generations of perhaps the greatest spiritual giants that we are aware of. Which means that in order for a person to be a maimin be'emunah shleima, to believe with complete faith in the advent and the existence of Nevi'im, of the prophets, and prophecy, as we're going to see, is what all of our Torah really hinges upon. We're not a nation who found a book on a mountain all by themselves. We're a nation who stood by Har Sinai and received Nevuah, prophecy. We find that throughout our history as the Jewish people, as long as there was Nevuah, as long as there was prophecy in the world, so those prophets would share the intimate words that they had with HaKadosh Baruch Hu and let us know what Hashem was thinking about us. And then we see time and time again that the words of the prophets did not go unanswered or did not go turned away. Rather, and even we'll see, and even in this week's Parsha, Bechukoisai, it's a prophecy that took place 1,000 years before the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, of the temple, and yet everything that the Torah itself prophesied inside of the punishments that will come to the nation when we don't observe and follow the ways of Hashem, so they all came true in the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. How could the Torah know? Again, if it was written by a man, how could the Torah know what was going to take place to our nation 1,000 years later? How could it have known that some of the most difficult and painful descriptions of what the suffering of the Jewish people were going to be like? How could the Torah have known that? Because since the Torah is given to us with prophecy, which means not inspired, as Rav Yaakov Weinberg points out, we're not talking about men that walked the world and they were divinely inspired because they got a feeling of inspiration inside of them and they shared their words. No, on the other hand, there is nevuah, there is prophecy that is handed over to the greatest people of the generations. It stopped at a certain point. We'll have to discuss why it is that prophecy stopped. But if you don't have enough humility to be able to acknowledge that we are a generation that is so far away from the world of prophecy, so far away from the protection of spirituality, the way that the prophets lived their lives, as we're going to see, so then you're going to have a very hard time being be'emunah shlema, to believe with complete faith that there's something called nevuah, called prophecy, and that those prophets are the ones on whose entirety of the Torah really hinges upon. And I'd like just to read you the words of the Rambam, because the Rambam himself, in Hilchos Yesodei HaTorah, which is his magnum opus of halacha and law, and where he also describes many of the foundations on which the Torah rests upon, he speaks about nevuah, he speaks about prophecy. And just that we should have a little bit of a background on what it meant to be a prophet. So we should understand that we have no connection. We are not in their plane of existence at all. And it has to be understood from here on out that these are the levels that the prophets existed on, and that's why they were chosen by Hashem to be the ones that are going to share His word with our nation. And he writes, Mi Yesodei Adas, from the foundations of our religion, of our faith, Leida Shakel Menabes B'nei Adam. You have to know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu shares His prophecy with B'nei Adam, with human beings. Ve'eina nevuah chala el al chacham gadol b'chachma. Says the Rambam, who is worthy of being a prophet? And the reason I want to read these words is, let's just understand the level and the loftiness of the people that we are discussing over here. Number one, has to be a chacham gadol b'chachma, a very wise person who is enriched with chachma, with the wisdom, and we always refer to over here the wisdom of the Torah. So we're talking about, number one, a Talmid Chacham, a tremendous Torah scholar. That's number one. Gibor b'midosav, someone who is very strong in their midos, in their character traits, which means that they rule over their negative traits. You cannot find a trace of a negative character trait inside of this person. They are refined, they are noble, they are pure, they are compassionate, they are gentle, they are sensitive, they are respectful. All of the traits that you could imagine would show a person the perfection of a human being. We know that when Rabbi Salanta, the father of the Musar movement, when he went on his crusade to introduce the study of Musar, of ethics, and tikkun hanefesh, and working on oneself into Klal Yisrael, he did it because he saw that the nation was failing in the way in which they treated one another, the way that they would act towards another person, the way that they would talk, the way that they would walk, the way that they would take care of the Yisayimim or not take care of the orphans, the way that parents were treating children and children would be mechutzah to their parents, and the way that we would deal with people in shul. Rav Yisrael Salanta understood that's not the way that a Jew is supposed to look. So he went on a campaign to make sure that every single Jew that he could come in contact with was aware of the fact that there's a discipline in the world called Musar, which is self-help and correction, and that unless a person would be learning it, they would not be able to be in control and better their midas. A Navi had to make sure, in order to be qualified as a prophet, he had to be gibor b'midaisav, he had to be a warrior. He had to be a mighty warrior when it came to controlling his midas, his character traits. They all had to be refined completely. And number three, says the Rambam, his yetzer hara, that evil inclination, the impulses, the lowly drives, sensual drives, earthy drives, all the things inside of him, the ideas that get him to do the wrong things. Says the Rambam, the yetzer hara is not allowed to be misgaber, is not allowed to have strength over him. Ella, says the Rambam, hu misgaber b'daitu al yitzor tamid. He always, constantly has to be in control of the yetzer hara. It could never get him. So you're talking about not a regular person. And the Malbim, the truth is, in Mishlei writes that what is a tzaddik, what is a righteous man? Someone who is in total control of his yetzer hara, which means that he will never act on the whims and the drives and the confusion that the Yetzer Hara would like to implant inside of a person. The Navi, the prophet that we are discussing over here, and we are going to discuss in here, is someone who is in total control of his Yetzer Hara. He never gets fooled. He never gets lured in the wrong direction. He never does something that is inappropriate in the eyes of Hashem. Can we relate to such a person? We don't know such people. Certainly not ourselves. Halavai, we wish that we wouldn't give into our Yetzer Hara 25 times every single hour. Halavai. And the Navi, the prophet over here, is someone who is in mastery and control. Daita, his mind, rules over the tricks and the tachbulos and the plans and the strategies of the Yetzer Hara. So we're talking already just 3 things that we listed so far. We're talking about a giant. Adam shumemula b'chol amidas ha'elu. Someone who has these 3 attributes, which we just described. And on top of that, shalom begufay, he has to be physically complete and total as well. His body can have no movement, he can have any blemishes, he cannot be too long, too short, too wide. He's got to be the image of perfection. The chitzonis, the outside, is going to reflect that which is on the inside. Kishikanes the pardes. So when he enters into the deeper realms of Torah wisdom, v'yimshach ba'oisan ha'inyonos hagdolim ha'rechokim, and he goes deep, deep, deep into the loftiest levels of Jewish thought and wisdom. And his mind is clear and is sound in order to be able to understand those things that are hidden and not revealed to all of us. And he sanctifies himself and he continues going forward. And he will distance himself from the regular rigmarole actions of the people around him. Those of us that go in the darkness of the times, of the days, which means we all are drawn after the interest and the curiosity of this world. We are all drawn into and we are lured easily into those things which really, in spiritual terms, are choshech, are darkness. And when a person goes in that direction, so they can never be a Navi, they can't be a prophet. The Navi, the prophet, is someone who is so far removed from the belittling things that you and I and the Hamanam, the majority of Klal Yisrael, is indulging themselves in this world. He's got to be way far beyond his hoylech umiskadesh. He keeps moving and sanctifying himself one level after the other. He continues on and he inspires himself. He enthuses himself. And he teaches himself. He should not have a single stray thought in his mind. He's not into politics, he's not into sports, he's not into the COVID-19, what all the cutting edge experts are saying. He's not getting involved in anything that is here in this world, anything that could take his mind off of the one vision that he has, which is to be shalom, to be complete in his avodas Hashem, in his service of God. His mind rather is constantly directed above, and it is connected underneath the kisei hakavod, the throne of glory, which means his neshama, as we'll see later on, is so high up there. In order to understand the images and the ideas that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the holy vision that Hashem is going to give him, he's able to see all the wisdom of this world, the way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu made it from one end to the other, all the way into the center of the earth. He knows its greatness. Immediately, if a person reaches all of these levels, then what is called Ruach HaKodesh, which is divine spirit, which is the entrance into the world of prophecy, is going to rest on such a person. So first things first, says the Rambam, and that is that if we would like to become people that are ma'aminim, we are believers in the world of nevuah, prophecy, the only way that it's going to be done is you must recognize what a prophet is. It's not like you and I. It's not a regular person walking around the streets, which is why we will see in later generations, after prophecy was lost, at least by the Talmidei Chachamim, the great scholars of every generation, who lived a life almost like a prophet, where they lived a life where their mind was completely consumed with Torah. They were always working on refining their attributes and their character traits. They were in control of the Yetzer Hara. They were working all day long to remove themselves from the foolishness of this world and follow the pathways of Hashem and His directions. Therefore, even though they won't be prophets, but at least they'll reach a level what's called Ruach HaKodesh, divine inspiration, I guess that we will call it, where HaKadosh Baruch Hu is shining and resting His countenance down on them. And that's why we find miraculous stories with the great leaders of the Torah world in every generation, that they literally lived a life that was below Nevuah, but it was much higher up than we are living. So once that you dedicate your life to such a cause, where you want just to be a spiritual entity who's going to be so connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and you do things in the way that is necessary, then you can be zeicha to have such a high, lofty level of Ruach HaKodesh, of divine inspiration, which is again lower than prophecy. But most of us certainly are not on that level, that's for sure. Most of us have a lot of other things that are in our mind, a lot of other interests that take up our time, a lot of other conversations that we're busy having with people throughout the day. We're watching shows and videos and WhatsApps and all the different things that we're involved with. You can't be a Ruach HaKodesh person with all of that. You can't even appreciate what it means to be in total control of one's Yetzer Hara, of one's inclinations and impulses and drives in the wrong direction. And therefore, I'm just giving as a hakdam, as an introduction to the world of prophecy, that in order for us to become the ma'aminim, the believers in the world of the prophets and the nevuos and the prophecies that they brought to this world, we must be humble enough to acknowledge and admit that there were gigantic spiritual people in the world thousands of years before us who lived a totally different lifestyle than we did. Their whole focus and their whole direction and their whole drive and the actions which filled up their lives was completely different than we are. And that's why they were zeicha, that's why they merited to be prophets, and that's why we ourselves are not prophets, and we're not going to even reach the levels of Ruach HaKodesh, of divine inspiration that Hashem sends down upon us, because we have too many other things that are going on in our lives that are stealing us, so to speak, off that course. So this again, and we'll come back, the Rambam has many, many other things to say about the world of prophecy, and we'll see that as we go along. But this is the idea that we're going to begin speaking about over here, and that is that the world of the prophets is a world that is not accessible to us in prophecy itself, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu, He set up for all generations that we should hear and should be written down the prophecies that are most important and relevant to every single generation. The Gemara tells us that we find in Tanakh, right? Tanakh is Torah, Nevi'im, and Kesuvim, which is the Torah Shebechsav, the written word, and Nevi'im are the words of the prophets. There's 48 prophets that are written down in there, and it goes through all of their prophecies that they shared with Klal Yisrael. So the Gemara asks, is that all that there were? 48 prophets? We know that we have the Chazal, the sages teach us that in the days of the Beis Hamikdash was still in its place, and prophecy was still in the world, like the Vilna Gaon tells us over. There were millions, perhaps, of prophets in the world. And when you ever had a question, you ever had a doubt, you want to know what to do with your life, instead of going to the therapist and asking for a little bit of chizuk, some inspiration, instead of going to the rabbi and asking him, what should I do with my life? You went to the prophet. The prophet looked at you and he looked deep inside of your neshama and he saw exactly the nature of who you are. And he told you, he got a nevu, he got some kind of prophecy, prophetic vision. He would tell you, Hashem wants you to do this. Hashem wants you to go here. Hashem says, don't do this anymore. If you want to fulfill your tafkid, your purpose in this world, then you have to behave and you have to act like this. So says the Gemara, we know that there were millions of prophets. Why are there only 48 that are written down for all of posterity in the Nevi'im, in the book of the prophets? And the Gemara says, because these are the prophecies that are relevant to every single generation, ad bias gal tzedek, until Mashiach will come. And that's why we have them. But don't forget, there really were numerous, thousands of prophecies in the world, but these are the ones that are set in stone for all generations. Now, says the Rambam, Ani ma'amin be'emunah shalema. I believe in perfect and complete faith. Shekol divrei neviim emes, that all of the words of the prophets are emes, they are true. Now, what is the Rambam coming to? What is he coming to tell us over here? That you must believe that all the words of the prophets are true. He's coming to dismiss the idea in the world of those who would like to say that the words of our Nevi'im, the words of our prophets, and as we'll see, primarily that of Moshe Rabbeinu and Klal Yisrael, are not all true. There's divine inspiration, they're divinely inspired, they said what they wanted to say, or the fallacy that people say, oh, you see what was going on when the Torah was being given at Har Sinai, you see all the signs and the wonders that were taking place over there, it looks like the Jewish people were hallucinating on drugs. Chas v'shalom to say such a thing. Says the Rambam, a person must be able to proclaim that I believe with complete faith. Shekoil, every single word that the Nevi'im said, that the prophets said, emes are truth, absolute truth, directly from HaKadosh Baruch himself, as we're going to say. Because if you have a doubt in the words of the Nevi'im, in the words of our prophets, and you think that it's really not true what they're saying, or you think that this guy went around, Jeremiah, Yirmiyahu went around, and he made up what he wanted to say because he saw the Jewish people misbehaving, and he was getting frustrated with them, so he went and he started blasting them and giving them rebuke. And if you think that Yirmiyahu HaNavi, the great prophet Jeremiah, said words of prophecy that he made up by himself, then you just won't get the story of the history of the Jewish people. You won't see how they prophesied about future destruction that's going to take place. But just like they prophesied about destruction and hardship and exile that we're going to go through, they also spoke about the return to the land of Israel. They spoke about the brachas, the blessings that will rest upon our nation. They spoke about the supernatural powers that Klal Yisrael, the Jewish people, are going to enjoy here in this world. They understood all of that. And therefore, just like we see that their words, their premonitions of the bad, quote unquote, came true, so then that itself is also the same strength of emunah that we have, that the good is also going to come true. As we know, the famous story of Rabbi Akiva, we're still in the days where we think to ourselves about the greatness of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva once he lived in the times at the end of the destruction of the second Beis Hamikdash, the second temple, which means the temple was destroyed. And there he is walking through the streets of Yerushalayim, and they're coming in to Har HaBayis, to the Temple Mount, and they see foxes running in and out of the Holy of Holies. And he's with a group of sages, and everybody begins crying. And Rabbi Akiva starts laughing. And they said, Akiva, why are you laughing? This is the saddest thing in the world over here. The pasuk says that in that Holy of Holies, that holy place, only the Kohen Gadol, the high priest on Yom Kippur, is allowed to go there. The holiest man, the holiest day of the year, in the holiest of places. And it says foxes are not allowed to go there. And now we see foxes going inside of there, strange animals running inside the Holy of Holies. He says, they said, how can we not be crying? And he told them, for the same reason that you are crying, I am laughing. Because now everything begins to make sense to me. Just as the Navi, as the prophet, prophesies for us that there will be terrible times in our history, when there will be destruction, and the Beis HaMikdash will lie in ruins. And instead of the Kohen Gadol, the holiest man on the holiest day in the holiest of places, going in there and beseeching forgiveness on behalf of all of Klal Yisrael, just like that is going to be destroyed, and foxes will run through that holiest of places, so then I know that the other prophecies in the Torah, which also speak about the rebuilding of the Beis HaMikdash and the returning of the exiles to Yerushalayim, I know that those are also going to come true. And for that reason I am laughing. Because at this moment in my life I'm filled with simcha, with joy. Because I recognize that everything the Nevi'im said is absolute truth. Not that he didn't believe that before, but he was showing to his friends, he was showing to his fellow sages over there, don't despair. This is all part of the Nevuah, all part of the prophecy that Klal Yisrael has received. And therefore, we believe Shekoil Divrei Nevi'im Emes, all of the words of the prophets are true. That means whatever comes out of their mouth is the word of Hashem. Without exception, without exception. And all of the Torah, as we're going to see, is also predicated on the Nevuah of Moshe Rabbeinu, of Moshe being the prophet par excellence. There never was another prophet like him in the world, and there never will be. And Klal Yisrael also was lifted up to the level of Nevuah, a prophecy like Moshe at the time of the giving of the Ten Commandments. And if you will say that even one word is not correct, that means you are doing away with the belief in prophecy. Which is why that we know that if you have a Sefer Torah, you have a Torah scroll where one letter is missing, the entire Sefer Torah is puzzle. It's all no good. Why? Because since Kol Divrei Nevi'im Emes, all of the words of the prophets are emes, are true. If one little yud, one little letter, one verse is not there, that means it undermines all of the prophecy of Klal Yisrael. And therefore we need everything to be intact, everything to be in place exactly as it is supposed to be. Says the Rambam, we have to believe completely that Hashem shares his emunah, he shares his nevuah, his prophecy with people, again, not regular people like ourselves, not leaders of world countries from previous generations, not even the Jews of Europe, which we hear so many miraculous stories of the Jews of Morocco or the Jews of Spain on the highest levels that they were. Not even Rashi was a prophet. The Ramban was not a prophet. Ruach HaKodesh, divine inspiration, yes. We assume that they probably had that because they lived their lives for the sake of Hashem. But prophecy, that's something that stopped already over 2,000 years ago. And to be a Navi, to be a prophet, we're talking about the highest of heights of humanity. Now, in our sefer that we've been using a lot of over here, the Yud Gimel Ikrim by Ben Zion Epstein, he says over the following: and the existence of all of the signs and wonders, like we find by the Exodus from Egypt, and in all the generations, Yisbayra Amitus HaNevuah, through them it becomes clear to us the truth of the nevuah, of the prophecy which was received. And the Ramban explains the following: when the signs and the wonders that come to the world first were decreed through the mouth of a Navi, of a prophet, then the truth of their nevuah, of their prophecy, becomes something that is clear and is obvious to us. Meaning, once you have a Navi who speaks, and the prophet says, X, Y, and Z is going to take place, and then you see, in fact, X, Y, and Z takes place, it happens exactly as he said it, and when the things that are even more far-fetched, that are totally out of the realm of human strength and abilities. He says that it's going to happen and it comes true. So that is a proof, a strong proof to us in the reality of Nevuah prophecy. Ki yedaber Elokim es ha'adam. So Hashem spoke to man, v'yigal esaydo el avadav hanevim, and He reveals His secrets. He reveals His plans to the Nevi'im, to the prophets. V'tiskayim imzeh kol haTorah kula, and all of the Torah exists upon such a thing. Again, this week's parsha, and Parshat Bechukaisai, it speaks about im Bechukaisai telechu, you go in the ways of my Torah, and you listen to me, and you follow my mitzvahs and my commandments. Oh, you have no idea all the brachas that are going to come to you, the goodness and the blessing and the health and the abundance and everything from Shemayim. You're going to live in your land, you're going to be strong, you'll be healthy, you'll have it all. Everything is going to be great. However, but if you despise my Torah and you despise the mitzvahs, so then the Torah goes on to a litany of curses that are going to take place. The Ramban Nachmanides explains that the Torah in fact was prophesying at that moment about what would transpire during the Churban Beis HaMikdash, the destruction of the temple in Yerushalayim. And he says that if you compare and you contrast all the words of the Nevi'im, Yirmiyahu, Yeshaya, others that were there around at the time of the destruction, you will see that everything that the Torah prophesied, which was very harsh punishments. Mothers are going to eat their children? Where did the Torah come up with such a thing? The nation is going to drive us out of our land? Where do you come up with such a thing? The Jewish people are going to be slaughtered with blood dripping down the streets of Yerushalayim. Where do you come up with such a thing? And all the other details that are there. How did the Torah know that? Says the Ramban, that's Nevuah, that's prophecy. And the fact that everything came true, like it says inside of the Chumash, that's a raya, that's a proof that the Torah is eternal, and the prophecy that exists for all of us is eternal as well, and that bolsters our faith, it bolsters our emunah in the realm of the prophets that have come to this world. How does a prophet reach the level of prophecy? So he says it comes obviously through the neshama, through the soul. The neshama is the loftiest aspect of a person. We know Kabbalistically, and we're not going to be able to explain it in full, because I myself don't understand it fully, but Kabbalistically, we have something called Naran. Neshama, Ruach, and Nefesh. What is neshama, soul, Ruach, spirit, and Nefesh, which is also a soulful aspect of the person? So the Nefesh HaChaim explains that neshama is the highest part of one's neshama, of their soul. It's the chelik elokam mimal, it's the most part of godliness that neshama is, and it's really up there in Shemayim, up there in the heavens. We don't really see our neshama so much in this world. Then you have ruach, then you have spirit, which is the connection of the neshama coming down here into this world. It's like bringing down the aspects and the warmth, so to speak, of the neshama down inside of us. But what exactly is the part of the neshama that resides inside of our goof, inside of our bodies? That's called nefesh. That's the lowest part of the neshama, which is called the ikvei neshama. It's called the heels of our neshama. Which means, you imagine the neshama, the ultimate part of the neshama, that's the roish, that's the head. The ruach is coming down, it's like the torso moving itself all the way down to the rest of the body. And then the lowest part of our soul, which finds its way inside of us, that's ikve, that's the heels of our neshama. The heels is something very small. The bottom of the foot over there's calluses and there's dried skin. It's nothing to write home about. That's the only piece of the soul that we actually have inside of our bodies. The neshama, which is the highest element of the person, to that is the place where nevuah, where prophecy is going to come from. Which means that a navi that's living down here in this world, it must be that he is deeply connected to the higher realm and elements of his neshama that is up there. even for ourselves, as the Nefesh HaChaim explains. He says like this: what's the goal of a person down here in this world? You are a neshama, you are a ruach, you are the spirit, and you are the nefesh. You are the lower level of the soul that is there inside of your body. What's our goal? If the neshama is who we really are, so how do we access it? What do we do? So he says that a person should look at their life down here in this world as if you ever went to one of these science centers and they have these big, gigantic ropes that are hanging from the roof over there, and they want to show you the way in which, I think it's kinetic energy, is going to work. If you shake the rope at the bottom, you'll watch as it goes all the way up to the top, hits the bell or hits the piece of metal, and then it comes all the way back down, right back into your hand. Says in Nefesh HaChaim, our neshama is like a rope. The top of the rope is the biggest part of our soul. The bottom of the rope is the smallest part of our soul. But when you're down here in this world and you shake up the neshama, which means through mitzvahs, through Torah, through davening, through chesed, through tzedakah, through anything that is deemed to be ruchni, spiritual in the eyes of Hashem, when you shake that low part of your soul down here, it begins to reverberate through all of the layers of the neshama. It goes up to the source of where your neshama is, and then it begins to bring down the kedusha, the holiness and the sanctity of your soul onto you. Which means that a piece of neshama now has come into your body, into this world. When you see tzaddikim, you see righteous people, and you look at their face, and their faces are radiating kedusha. There's like a light that's shining out of their forehead, lights that are coming out of their cheeks, lights that are beaming out of their eyes. What are you seeing at that point? You are seeing something that is not a physical light. You're not seeing physical radiation over here. You're seeing the radiance of their neshama that they're working so hard to bring it down into this world. Says Rav Epstein over here that you have to know that nevuah only comes to the neshama, which means the highest part of the human being, of their spiritual self and entity. Which means that those of us that live with the nefesh, which is just the heels, the calloused, dried skin heels of our neshama, the smallest part, you will not be zeicha. We will not merit that prophecy. The more mitzvahs that we do, the more Torah that we learn, the more chesed that we're involved in, yes, we'll shake the rope, and a little bit more of glimpses and glimmer of our neshama will come down. But the etzem, neshama, the true soul, that's going to remain up there in the heavens. A navi, as we described, like the Rambam says so clearly, we're talking not about a simple person. We're talking about a person on the highest of spiritual heights, which means he's bringing his neshama constantly down inside of him, and there is a big chelik, a big part of the neshama that resides up there and can commune with Hashem. And since that he makes himself into a vessel, he makes himself into a mouthpiece for the Shekhinah, therefore the HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to bless this person, and he's going to bring into this person and bring the shefa, the abundance of Shekhinah into his life, that he is going to be the conduit, he'll be the pipeline for bringing the prophecies here into this world. So remember, these are not simple people. These are not even like the greatest people of our generation. If you would go to ask of Chaim Kanievsky, how far are you from Nevuah? He would laugh at you. Nevuah, prophecy, are you kidding me? Do you know where the prophets were? They were the giants, spiritual giants. You know who was a prophet? Avram Avinu was a prophet. Yitzchak was a prophet. Yaakov Avinu was a prophet. Yosef HaTzadik was a prophet. And Moshe Rabbeinu was a prophet. Can I compete with those people? Spiritual giants who walked the earth. Again, first of all, they didn't live in our times. They didn't have all of the background noise and all of the different waves that are going in, the radioactive waves of tumah, of impurity that are flying into our homes. We had a Rebbitzin in Baltimore that she said that she was very, very careful when she was raising her children. She would not even take them to Rite Aid, because she said the powers of the radioactive waves of spiritual impurity was so great in Rite Aid, she simply did not want to expose her children to such things. Nevertheless, she said, it still seeps in under the front door of a person's house. It's right there. It's so hard to keep it pushed away and keep it away. We recently put Wi-Fi into our house. We didn't have it for many, many, many years. And we put it in, and so they hooked it up in different rooms so you make sure you have full strength. Upstairs, you have full strength. Downstairs, they put in all these conductors, whatever they're called, in different rooms. We're not used to Wi-Fi in the house. And I'm telling you that my wife and I were so sensitive to the radioactive waves of Wi-Fi. The first few days, we were just getting headaches all day long in the house from all these things that were coming into our own bedroom. So we had to unplug it because Pasha was getting headaches all day. Took it away, the headaches go away. Oh, you want to tell me psychological? I don't think so. The point is that there's radio waves that are destructive forces in the world. And that's in the Wi-Fi, that's in the computers, that's in the telephones, that's in the Bluetooth, that's in everything. But even worse than that are the spiritual waves of radioactivity that are flying around this world, trying to grab a person at every single step that they go. Nevi and prophets, they were immune to all of that. They never came in contact with it. They made sure they were careful where they went. They were careful whose presence they were hanging out with, careful what they read, careful what they watched with their eyes, careful where they walked. They were careful about everything. Their mind was absorbed, as we said before, constantly in the world of Torah. Control over their Yetzer Hara, their inclination. Completely refined and noble in their midas and their character traits. You couldn't find a trace of negativity, a spiritual negativity inside of them. And therefore, when we talk about Nevuah, prophecy coming to these people, we're talking about the greatest of men, the greatest of people in this world, who the highest part of their neshama is what was communing and communicating with HaKadosh Baruch Hu up in the heavens, and that would allow the prophecy to come straight through them, and they would be this pipeline of the conduit for the divine presence ideas and his message and his wisdom and his warnings. Very often we find the prophets, they would warn the Jewish people, what are you doing? Do you know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is watching you? Do you know that Hashem is aware of everything that you're saying, all the actions that you were involved with, how you're treating other people? Don't you know that Hashem is watching? And he's not very happy with the behavior of his children. And of course we find throughout history, unfortunately, the people get defensive. That's how it works. When you get criticized, we get defensive. And what would they do? They would hurl insults at the Navi. They would try to destroy him. They would run him out of town. They didn't want to hear all what he had to say, because if you listen to the Navi, then he's really telling you the truth. You might have to change your ways. And who wants to change their ways? But the Navi himself has Sagas HaNevuah, the revelation of prophecy, V'ruach HaKodesh, and divine inspiration, Al Yidei HaNeshama, comes from the highest and the loftiest of places. And that lofty place is the Neshama, which is high, high up here, as we are saying. So Hashem is talking to the loftiest, highest, holiest part of the person. So he writes over here, Aval Neshama hi nishmas shakai. The Neshama is the godliness of the person. Ve'natzmusai mushpa umiskala b'teicha adam. And the essence, like we were saying, the essence of the neshama is not something that is totally revealed inside of a person. It exists high up there in the heights. But it feeds a person wisdom. It feeds a person understanding. It gives them seichel hayosha. It gives them straight thoughts, logical reasoning, rational thoughts, to be able to learn, to be able to live their life the way that Hashem wants us to. So the neshama doesn't totally come down inside of us, yet it's able to trickle down some of the messages inside of who we are. But again, the Navi is living in a different realm altogether. And that's what he writes over here from the Derech Hashem. Hine chakuk abar yizbarach shemo b'tiva shel adam, she mislamed mavin umaskil. Hashem put it into the nature of a human being, that they're able to learn and to understand, and they become wise to the Torah that they are exposed to. Adam Oid goes a bit more than that. There's even a higher level of wisdom that a person can merit. And that is the wisdom, that is the logical reasoning that a person is getting from direct impact from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When Hashem gives the divine influx and the flowing directly from Him, and when this influence reaches your mind, suddenly things become extremely clear to you. And that is called Ruach HaKodesh, that is called divine inspiration. So even before we get to Nevuah, says the Ramchal, says Rav Moshe Chaim Lutzato in his famous Sefer Derech Hashem, you should know that if a person works and works and works to be able to purify their mind and purify their thoughts and fill themselves up with so much Torah and so much Kedusha, so much holiness, what is going to happen? Hashem is going to bring down a hashpah, a divine influence and influx of wisdom and of connection to the Shekhinah, to the divine presence. Your mind is going to be opened up in a way that it never was before. And that will be what's called Ruach HaKodesh. That will be called the divine inspiration that a great Talmidei Chachamim, great scholars and sages, they're able to have. If you've never been in the presence of a giant in the world of Ruchnius, really someone who's recognized as a Gadol Ador, as a leader of the generation, it's hard to understand this. But I had the schus several times in my life to be in the presence of a man by the name of Chaim Pinchas Scheinberg. Anyone who ever saw pictures of him, they know he wore about 100 pairs of tzitzis. He was a mound of tzitzis. He was tefillin all day long. He barely ate. He barely spoke. He learned day and night. And every single day for a few hours in the afternoon, his door was wide open. And anybody off the street was able to come and ask him any question, halachic guidance, moral guidance, life questions, whatever you needed, support, whatever you needed. I would tell you that basically every single time that I was in his presence, without fail, he would say things to either myself or the group of people that were there, that it's impossible that the words came out of his mouth unless there was a direct pipeline that was coming from Hashem telling us, putting those words into his mouth. He spoke, once I was there with a group of 10 other people, and he spoke the most basic but deepest ideas that connected to each one of our neshamas, and he said things that were like secretive things that all of us were struggling with, and he said it over in such a way. When we walked out of the room, everybody was looking around in amazement, and everybody said he was speaking just to me. And he said, how could he be talking to you? He was talking to me. Well, how could he be talking to you? He was talking to me. And everybody understood that there was something supernatural that was going on in that room at the time, that Rabbi Scheinberg himself was just a pipeline to the Ruach HaKodesh, to the divine spirit, to give over the message of the Shekhinah of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's words to each and every one of us, to elevate us, to make us understand what it is. Rav Chaim Kanievsky, who is in our generation recognized as the Baal Ruach HaKodesh, the man that has so much Ruach HaKodesh, so much divine inspiration, it's not normal the things that come out of his mouth. And he himself says, I don't even know where it comes from. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is sending the words. There's a story that I read recently. There was a young man, a Baal Tshuva, who was engaged to a Gioris, to a convert, to a woman that was a convert. And he went to Rav Chaim Kanievsky to get a bracha on the up-and-coming wedding that was about to take place in the next week or whatever it might have been. And he goes to Rav Chaim Kanievsky and he asks for a bracha for the up-and-coming chasana. And I don't even believe that the man told over too many details. And Rav Chaim Kanievsky told him, the shidduch is not for you. Break it off. And the man said, Rabbi, my kal is downstairs. We're getting married in a couple of weeks over here. I can't just break it off. And Rav Chaim Kanievsky, again, out of nowhere, he said, the shidduch is not for you. This girl is not for you. Break it off. But you don't even know. What can I tell you? The pipeline is coming down. It's not for you. He goes downstairs and he sees his kala, his bride, very eager to hear what was the great blessing of the Gadol Hadur, the leader of the generation. And she says, no, what did he say? He said, well, he didn't really give such a bracha over there. On the other hand, he said that the shidduch is not really for me, that she's not the right one. So the girl's eyes pop open. And she said, who told the Rav? Who told the Rav? How does he know? And the boy said, what? How does the Rav know? How does he know about me? He said, what are you talking about? And at that moment she admitted to her chassan that in fact, although she is posing as a full-fledged gioris, as a full-fledged convert, she was only in the process, and she did not yet finish the entire process of becoming of a Jew, and therefore she really is not Jewish yet, and she's not fit to be worthy and wed to this Jewish man. And Rav Chaim Kanievsky saved him from making a very big mistake. How did he know? That's called Ruach HaKodesh. That is called the divine inspiration. This is a story that I told over 1,000 times, but we'll tell it over again just that we should understand what this means. Rav Chaim Kanievsky, there was a young man who has been dating for years and years and years. He could not get a shidduch, he couldn't get married. A wonderful boy, beautiful midas, everything great. But he had one blemish that kept scaring off all of the girls. He had a major scar that was running down his cheek over there. And every time they would go out with a young lady, they would get into it, and a couple of dates would go by and it would look well. But then never, in every single situation, she'd always begin staring at that scar on the side of his cheek, and he knew exactly what was coming. He would get a call from the shadchan, the shidduch is not for her. Came to Rav Chaim Kanievsky, said, I don't know what to do. I go out with so many girls, I try so hard, but this scar on my cheek always makes it that they get scared off and they don't like the way it looks, and they drop me after a few dates. So Rav Chaim Kanievsky doesn't say anything except the following words. The next date that you go out on, tell her the story of how you got this scar. So the boy said, what? He said, the next date that you go out on, tell the girl the story how you got the scar on your face. And sure enough, a few nights later, he's going out with a young lady, and they're having a wonderful time on the shidduch, talking, laughing, schmoozing, and suddenly in the middle of the date, he notices that her eyes begin wandering to the scar on the side of his cheek. And he's charged with the words of Rav Chaim Kanievsky. And he says, you're probably wondering how I got that scar. Let me tell you the story. And the girl's head is down. She's very embarrassed that he caught her looking. And he said, quite a few years ago, I was walking one day through the Arab quarter, on my way to the Kaisel, to the Wailing Wall. I was going there to daven. And suddenly I hear screaming, I hear shrieking girls. And I look in front of me and I see that there's a group of Beis Yaakov girls running for their lives from an Arab man with wielding a knife in his hand. And they're screaming at the top of their lungs. And I can't watch this injustice. I run with all of my strength and all my might. And I run and I scream towards the Arab, stop! And the Arab turns around and he takes his knife and he slices into my face. And the girls go running off and I'm lying there on the ground, blood oozing out of me. They get Hatzalah, they take me to the hospital, and the knife was so deep, the wound was so deep inside, they called in the doctors over there, and they tried to do the plastic surgery, but this was the best that they could possibly do. And that's why I have such a scar running down my face. The girl is sitting there with her head down, and she looks up in total disbelief. And she says to this young man, you're the one? I've been looking for you for years to thank you for saving my life. I was one of those girls who was screaming for my life to be saved from that Arab. And as you can already guess the end of the story, yes, they got engaged and they got married and they lived happily ever after. How could Rav Chaim Kanievsky know such a thing? When you are connected to the pipeline of the Ribbono Shel Olam, and your neshama is soaring into the highest of heights, and you're a person who's learned Torah all day long, and you guard yourselves from the negativity of this world, and you live a life of kedusha, of holiness and sanctity, and you're a person who strives to do the Ratzon Hashem, the will of Hashem, so then of course HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to talk through you. That's one example in this world. However, the Nevi'im, the prophets who walked this world thousands of years ago, they were much greater and much loftier, and the neshamas were much more connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And when Hashem would end up giving them these levels of, He would talk to them, He would reveal Himself to them, He would share with them in His nevuah, His prophecy. We're talking about the highest of heights that a human being can reach in this world. And that's what the Ramchal goes on to say. V'yesh ma'ila acheres. There's even a higher level than Ruach HaKodesh, than divine inspiration. V'ya nevuah, that's called prophecy. V'inyano, what does that mean? Shigi odem v'yiskashe b'bar yisbarach. You know what the Navi, you know what the prophet does? He connects himself literally with Hashem. We're talking about a dveikis. When we use the word in Hebrew, dveikis, to be connected to Hashem, a Navi, a prophet, was Dovid, they clung. Dovid is the lashon of devik, which means glue. Glue is when you take two things and you stick them together. Dveikus, being close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, means you are glued to Hashem. You're not going anywhere. You're staying right next and attached to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'yidabik bo dveikus mamish boifin sheyagish hadveikus. You become so close, so unified with the Ribbono Shel Olam, you feel the dveikis, you feel the Shechina, you feel the presence of Hashem. V'yasig mashu medabik boi v'hainu kvoidai. You're able to understand the glory of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is enveloping you. Because that your neshama is so dovik, is so close and so connected to Hashem. To toiseba mitzias haskala, your mind, it stretches onto a whole new plane of thought. Chutz migeda haskala hanoishis legamri. You're beyond human beings. You're beyond human thought. You're in a new realm of total intellectual, spiritual, soulful existence. It's not what you have in your brain. Rather that your lofty neshama, which again is all the way up there in the world's tachas, kisei al-kavod, below the throne of glory, that now is getting direct communication to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's not human. That's not what we hear with our ears over here. It's not what we learn inside the books. You are now on a level that is way beyond human reality. You went into the world of Nevuah, into the world of prophecy, where HaKadosh Baruch Hu has chosen you, not anybody else. He has chosen you to be able to be zeicha, to receive a direct pipeline of information, of words, of messages that you are now supposed to go and reveal to Klal Yisrael. Nobody could relate to such a thing. Nobody in this generation or in the previous 2,000 years can understand what it means truly to be a Navi. And therefore the Rambam begins over here, Ani ma'amin be'emunah shalema. Part of our emunah is that it has to be complete. Shekol divrei neviim emes, when you begin to understand just how great the Nevi'im were, these giants, spiritual giants, single thing that came out of their mouth, which they claimed was a nevuah from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's all emes, it's all true. Because it's not what I think that I heard, it's not what I'm trying to understand, and this is really what we're going to have to speak about in the world of nevuah. It's actually HaKadosh Baruch Hu speaking directly to me. I hear Him, I get it, I understand, and my job now is to share that over with the rest of the world. That is something that is intrinsic to our emunah, intrinsic to our faith, because as we will see, Torah itself is predicated on the nevuah of Moshe Rabbeinu. All the Nevi'im which warned us, and they foreshadowed what would take place later in history, it's all based on nevuah, all based on prophecy. And if a person is weakened and lacks in the world of belief that everything that HaKadosh Baruch Hu could speak to human beings, again, the human beings that we're defining over here, not human beings like us. People say, oh, there's no prophecy today. Of course there's no prophecy today. Can you find a person on the level like the Rambam explains? Can you find a person in our generation whose neshama is so lofty and so big up there that Hashem can commune with him? Find me a person. If you could find a person, there would be prophecy. But the bottom line is, there's not. Now we shall see. The Gemara tells us, Chacham, Adif Minavi, a Torah scholar on the high levels is maybe even better and greater than a prophet, because a prophet only gets his nevuah when Hashem decides to give it to him, but a Chacham can be attached to Hashem's wisdom all of the time. That might be true. But nevuah is only something, prophecy is only something that HaKadosh Baruch Hu chose to select few thousands of years ago, who are on the madrega, on the level of total spiritual perfection, on the highest madrega, the highest level you could possibly imagine. And therefore they were given over the words of prophecy to share with us for all generations. So this is just the beginning of the world of prophecy. We have a lot still to discuss to inspire ourselves and to make ourselves enthusiastic in our belief of what it means to understand and appreciate Nevuah, the prophecy that comes to the world. And Be'ez Hashem, if we do that, then it will just solidify the animamim be'emunah shalema, that I believe beyond the shadow of the doubt, complete faith. Shekol divei neviim emes, all of the words of the prophets that are written down for all generations for us to learn from, they're all emes, they're all true. Like we said, you see in this week's parsha, it all came true in the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. And as we see throughout the Nevi'im, things which took place, it was all prophesized. And that's the hope for all of Klal Yisrael, that if all of that which was negative in prophecies which told us the destruction and the hardships and the exiles and the beatings and the murders and the life of Gehenna that Klal Yisrael would have to live throughout history, that means all of the positive and all of the redemption and all of the rebuilding and all of the returning to Eretz Yisrael and all of the Mashiach and everything that it says in there, we have to believe be'emunah shlema that all of that is true as well. And although we might not have seen those prophecies come true yet, but the haschol, the beginning, certainly we are beginning to see, and that will mechazik us, that will strengthen us to live a life of emunah shlema, of complete faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the way in which He runs the world, where He guides it, and He shares with us His information through the mouths of the holy and the saintly Nevi'im prophets of the previous generations. Have a wonderful day. If anybody has a question, happy to answer. Anyone? Okay. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thank you, Rabbi Horowitz.
You're welcome. Good Shabbos. All the best. All the best.